written down is that you moved in and started staying with
with the Ziretsky.
Yeah.
When she came back from Köln, it was some sort, I don't know whether they had a misunderstanding or whatever it is that it was, but she started pestering me. I should tell her how was the house when I didn't bother, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. I don't know how or where I got at that time this kind of sixth sense not to tell her, not to become involved, because eventually they made up. But I gained some respect from her and from him, that I never told on the state of affairs that I got the house in when she wasn't at home. And one day I discovered something, she found something on me. I was doing the bedroom, and she called me in to the kitchen. And as I was coming in from the kitchen, I was standing in the door, and she turns around and she says, "Maria, sind Sie Yiddish?" And all my blood ran right into the feet. I didn't know where. I says, "Was fällt Ihnen ein?" So what kind of an idea is that? She says, "Look, I know." I says, "What do you know? How do you know?" I was stupid. I mean, I was smart, but I was stupid too. I had a big muff that I took along with me, and in the muff, in between the underlining, I had a picture. Me, my mother, and a boy that, I don't know if he was a boyfriend or he wasn't a boyfriend, but we were all in the ghetto, and we all were wearing the white armband with the blue star. So she says, "Isn't it foolish for you to carry it around with you?" So I started crying, and I told her that, I lost everything, and somehow or other this made me feel that maybe I have some part of somebody someplace. So she made me burn it. She made me burn it. She says, "Okay, I found it. That's okay. I'm not going to tell anybody. But what if somebody else would find it?" So she burned it on the gas stove in the kitchen. And from then on, she became, that same night, she says, "It's just going to be between you and me, and we will not tell Werner about it." She says, "Because I don't know what he's going to do. He holds a high position. Maybe he'll have to tell somebody. We're not going to tell him." I have a feeling that she might have told him, but I mean, if she didn't want to tell him, I wasn't about to insist that she does. But from that night on, she began calling Köln to make arrangements that I should go there. To her parents, she felt that maybe I'll be safer there in Köln. But of course, the papers were necessary, and it meant that somebody has to go in and apply. And then when my other name came in, and she said, "Look, it's really ridiculous. You go to the Germans, to any of the Beamte there, and they'll give one look at what kind of a person are you? One name here, one name there." And she says, "And this time they're going to check. And they'll find the other lady." I was very much afraid. She says, "If you want to take a chance, we will go along with you. But once the ball starts rolling, you are on your own." I was sitting pretty. I didn't go anyplace. I was sitting in their house. I was out. I could go for a walk. I went to the people. I said, "Let's forget it for a while." And of course, at one time they were either taking a census or doing something. Some kind of a Polish official came up. The superintendent sent them up, and he says, "How many people live here?" I was there cleaning. So she says, "2." So the super told us 3. So she says, "Tell the super not to have such a big mouth. When I tell you 2, it's 2. And get out of here." So she was very protective of me. She was nice, and she was kind, and she would do things like when they would go to the officers' club for supper, She would sometimes ask me to come along, to come meet her at a certain time, and she would bring out in a bag some of the food so I could take home and I should eat, because there wasn't enough. Now, if she would get one egg, for instance, for her and one for him, she would give me the egg, because she says, I work harder than she does, cleaning the house and so on. And after she knew that I was Jewish, and now, I mean, there was nothing I could do but admit to her, she used to, when she saw the Krakow, people from Krakow go out to work through, through the window, she would call me over and she would sit and speak to me about these things. How does it feel? And I told her my father was in America by that time, I thought. Oh, he was in South America, I knew that. And she was very curious, very, very human as a person. But I suppose in a group, I don't know how she was in a group. Towards me, she was warm and she was kind. And she acknowledged that she really never had anything to do with Jews. And she couldn't, the way they were presenting the Jews to some of the people who had no contact, she couldn't understand that I had some knowledge of music, that I could sing certain classical pieces, that I read a book and I could read in German and I could read in Polish, and the evenings I didn't run around, I was staying home and reading. That's all I was doing. She didn't know I was scared to get out. I mean, I didn't feel. Well, I'll cut it at this point, because then one night they had a party. So I served, and lots and lots of people. It was a nice house that they had. And once I finished the serving, I went into the kitchen, I drew the curtain, and I went to sleep. Well, some of them got drunk and they started coming in and so on. They were very mindful. A guy I could hardly cope with at that time because he was drunk. I didn't know what to do with him. And I didn't want to scream, because they go right away with the gun and with the revolver and be quiet, because you know who I am. But they every once in a while Werner would come in and have a look and throw him out. So after that party, they had so much food and there was so much waste. They had a whole little piglet that they made, and there were so many bones and stuff and all kinds of things like that. And they were ready to throw it out, and I said, don't throw it out. I mean, there are people who don't have what to eat. And besides, in the place where I used to live, my friends had a big dog. And I said, I'll take it there and let the dog have some fun with it. Then we'll throw it out. I took it and I went in there, and the door to go into them was a glass, half glass on top. And I opened the door, and there was the Polish police and the German police inspecting the house. Instead of coming in and taking the package and leaving it on the table and either going in or going out or doing whatever, I got scared and I backed out. And somebody noticed me. And then they suddenly started asking me questions, and they saw my papers, and it was already like 4 months that I had time to do it, and I hadn't done it, and they arrested me. So when they arrested me, they took me into the precinct, which was around the initial first precinct where I came to report the loss of my documents. So the guy examined me, and he says, what kind of a story are you giving me? This name, that name, who doesn't know? You must be Jewish. I said, no, but then what they usually do, they used a lot of, they beat and they drop things at you, the typewriter, tell you to hold the typewriter, and then he told me to let go. So it fell on I had no idea. My threshold of frustration was already null. I couldn't fight with them, and I finally said, okay. But before they interrogated me, it was at night, in the evening, I said, I'm not talking to you, I want to call the people that I work for. And I called, and when she got on the phone, she cried. She said, if you would not have admitted that you are Jewish, if you would have said, if it would be a matter of having killed somebody or done something, I'm sure we could have pulled you out of it. But the fact that you said you were Jewish, there is absolutely nothing that we can do for you. So, but she went over to speak to the arresting officer, and she bawled him out, and she said, she did, I mean, to me she said one thing, and to him she said, you know, you shouldn't have arrested, and you had no right to do it, and I'm responsible, and don't make anything, I'll take her home, and blah, blah. No, this was before they interrogated me. That was the first thing. Afterwards they interrogated me. But she says, I know that you were Jewish too, and therefore I don't know whether we could do something, but I'll speak to Werner. And the next day she called. She was supposed to call, but she never called. I guess they didn't want to become involved. She called the office desk, and she said that she would like to, I had her ration cards and the things from home, because on the way shopping I stopped in with the other people, with the bones. They bothered me. So then they took me to Montelupich, and in Montelupich, while I was there, I saw a name of one of my friends from school engraved on the wall, that she was there too. And the following day, they took away, I had a watch, and I had a ring, and I had something else that the forestman took away from me too, but I had another one. And then I was called that Mr. and Mrs. Zaretsky are upstairs, and they want to see me. No, she didn't tell me that on the phone. She just bawled the guy out, he should let me go. But when I came up and waited in the waiting room for them to come, they were made an appointment. I was sitting at benches, and there were posters all over the place. And Mr. Zaretsky, they came to that place, to the headquarters, in civilian. He didn't wear his uniform. And he pretended to read something that was above me, and he said, that's when he said to me, you know, Maria, if you didn't acknowledge that you were Jewish, we might have been able to do something for you, but once you are Jewish, the situation is such that we can really not do anything for me. So then they called me into that big guy, to the chief, and they were there, and I was there. Of course, they were sitting on one end of a big, big, long table. I was sitting at the other end, and we were talking about how it came about. They only wanted to know how I was able to live for a half a year or so, that there must be a conspiracy, that there must be somebody who is producing the papers and making the papers. That's all they were interested in. They weren't interested in anything else. They wanted to know how I survived under their watchful eyes without being apprehended before. And they felt that maybe there is a whole group of people who make the papers or make it enable it. They would not accept the fact that I did it all on my own, that I went from Helm all on my own, that nobody was there to help me. That was all he was concerned. And he was questioning me a great deal, and eventually this Mrs. Zaretsky started to cry. He sent me out, and he yelled at her, what kind of a business is it to cry after a filthy, lousy, dirty Jewess? What kind of a business is that? And so on and so forth. And you know how they always say, I am different. The other Jews are not like that. She liked me. So the only thing was that when they walked out from the office of the Gauleiter, or whatever his name, whatever his title was, they went over to with the Polish clerks. They all were very, very big, strong people. he went over to him and he said, you know, you treat her right, and you don't do this to her, and you don't do that to her, and blah, 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 and don't send her downstairs until he... So they decided then that they are going to send me to the Jewish ghetto. That's what they told him, but they didn't send me to the Jewish ghetto. They sent me to the Jewish... He supposedly bargained with the guy that they should send me to the ghetto, but what they did is they sent me to the ghetto prison. And that's where I met the people that I eventually wound up with in Auschwitz. And the guy who was driving me down to this ghetto was also trying to they were all so surprised how I was able to sustain myself. How whether there is no clique that is going to undermine. It was a horrible thing. I lied to the German government. I did something to them that they couldn't understand. Well, then we went to the prison, and the ghetto prison wasn't a very pleasant place to be. The Montelupisch prison wasn't pleasant because the surrounding wasn't there, and it was full of bed bugs and full of all kinds of people there. But in the ghetto prison, that the people who were in charge, the other Jews who were in charge, were terribly, terribly, what should I say, bossy. Get up, go in, stand up, stay here, stay there, go here, go there. And eventually on the time of the final, I don't think it was the final clearance, but of the transport from Krakow, they incorporated us with the transport. They loaded us on trucks, on big buses. And while we were going to Auschwitz, some of us, and there were many more people in that prison than just than the 24 of us, there were men there and so on. And as they were loading us in, I don't know how many people they put in one. They were kind of pushing us into that truck as cattle, one against the other. And we drove out from Krakow with motorcycles all around, and with the convoy was very, very carefully guarded. And somewhere outside of Krakow, somebody ripped the, what do you call it, the cover, and a whole bunch started running out. It was right in front. I was one of the last to get in. I could have gone out. I was already scared. I was so tired from all the fighting that I have done. The keeping myself in shape or in form and something to function the way I had functioned. I figured that, you know, if the end comes, it's enough. I can't stand it anymore. So when they were rushing, and some of the people that I was much closer with in prison, they decided to go. But as they went out, they shot them. Many of them got shot down, and many of them probably were able to roll off into the fields. And if somebody would take care of them, they probably remained alive. When we came to Auschwitz, the general transport went into Birkenau. We were held in Auschwitz for a while. And then they didn't know what to do with us. They put us against the wall. Should they shoot us? Should they send us? Should they do this? Finally, we caught up with the rest of them. And when we came into Birkenau, we knew it was a lovely, lovely day. It was kind of frosty but sunny, and a couple of clouds. And I couldn't understand that, you know, that I won't see the sun anymore. That's all I was concerned about. My girl, one of the girls who stood next to me, she said, "How can you think about the sun and the clouds and the formations and the thing? You're going to die." So I said, "That's what I can think. I won't see it anymore." I couldn't remember my father or my mother. I couldn't visualize anybody. All I could see is the sun and the world, and no more in 5 minutes. But then when we came to that group, and we kind of stuck out. because we came from the outside, so we all were wearing civilian clothing. And we were neatly dressed, and most of us were bleached and nice. And the people from the ghetto were already downtrodden. They were wearing uniforms. They were looking, and besides, the people that they were putting on the other side were old and crippled and sick. So when we found ourselves in that particular group, we knew right away that this is not what we really were. I don't know what we wanted. We didn't want that either. But anyhow, when we continued walking down in the direction of the crematory in was this taped already? The one with Mengele? No, that's what I told you before. Then he came rolling down, and the way he moved in with this tremendous motorcycle right on the people. You see, the people who were sick and all, their reflexes weren't that good to kind of jump back. He knocked over a couple of people. But then when he saw us, he kind of like took a second look and he kept going. So the girl, one of the girls, stopped him. And she said, foot got right in front of him, and that this is something that I have learned later while being in Auschwitz, that if you were able to answer them back, they wouldn't hit you. You know, it was the sadistic need was satisfied only when you fell, and when they could, I don't know how to say it, but with that one incident, I could see how he was driving a little bit slower, but he was still driving. If somebody had the nerve and the gumption to get over to him and stop him, and tell him, you know, stop, and you listen, and I want to talk to you about it, and so on. And that's how he got her on the side, and we went over to him. We also wanted we also wanted to be, I forgot the word already, onitzbar, useful. He said that the girl will be useful. She got only mixed up in front of the gate, and she's not Jewish. She was going to work, or blah blah blah. So he took her out, and he took the other 24 of us out, and the lady, who wasn't really elderly, she must have been gray. Some people get gray at 20, 30. So to her he said, "Du hast schon genug gelebt," lived enough, and she went in. And we went back. When we came back, he had an argument with the Lagerführer, because, what do you mean? I said they should go here, and you say they should go there. But he took us in, and when they took us into the camp, I mean, the people, the kind of people you saw, and I began to wonder, is this better than that? The other one, at least you go and you get it over with. With this, it's not... It's a long drawn story, but they put us on quarantine, and I told you, on the quarantine we bunched together. Before they signed us up, before they gave us the number and so on, they came to make a number of speeches about don't tell us a lie, and you are Jewish, and we don't want to know anything about that being non-Jewish. It couldn't have possibly, we get the papers, so on. So we were 24, 10, I think 10 decided to remain non-Jewish, to go on the non-Jewish, and 14 of us remained Jewish. Now you know the difference. The number is, the difference between the number, how a Jewish number is distinguished from a non-Jewish number. The triangle, yeah. Do you also know about the sequence in which they have numbered? That the A's, the numbers that come back here, is after the first 100,000. Yeah, every 100,000 would get a new letter, and when they got with these to 100,000, then they went back. And the way they arranged you, the way they set you up, it was in that quarantine where they supposed to have kept us for 2 weeks. Half of the people went because it was cold, and we weren't dressed properly, we didn't get shoes, We didn't get food. We weren't supposed to. We were told not. That's true. We were told not to drink water, but that water was poisonous, and whoever couldn't restrain himself and drank it got sick, got diarrhea from that. So, but we stuck together for the first 2 weeks, all 14 of us, and it came out like that because they would put 14 in one space. You slept 7 this way and 7 the other way, and you worked in like sardines. And we tried to keep together, to stick, to cover for each other. If somebody would be sick, we would stay in. And eventually we branched out because they didn't allow this. They kind of separated people who were too much together. Once they got wind of it, that there is a group, they made you go here and the other one go there. But we did manage to meet with each other very frequently in the morning, when you got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go and bring the food, and at the latrine. That's where we used to also see each other from different places. And there, you know, with the music and with the burning and with the orchestra that they had and all this kind of business. And with the other thing, you know, I think that it was so characteristic, and I think that part of our philosophy now has that kind of a contamination. If you can steal as long as you are not caught. Girls used to bring back into the camp all sorts of dresses and all sorts of outfits. They brought them on their body. If somebody would catch them with it, they will get shot. But if they brought it and they sold it and you wore it next day, they wouldn't do anything to you. Because in themselves, they had some crazy ideas about filth and they made you live in filth and then they beat you for it. They wouldn't permit you to go to the bathroom, just like in the morning and lunchtime and in the evening. And while you were walking barefoot, this is what I have a carryover from there, is that I have to go to the bathroom for years. I wouldn't go to the movies because I go by a bathroom, I have to go. Because right away I think maybe later I wouldn't be allowed to go. You know, there will be a bathroom later. But it took me many, many years to work this out. You could do it only at certain hours. And if you had a cold and you did it in your pants, then you got beaten up, sometimes trampled down to death because you stunk. So that was, and here, and they, on one hand they did that, and on the other hand they were showing off with their love for culture and love for music. They would pick us those that play violin. They had a violinist once they picked up from Belgium. They didn't let her do a thing. They made her play the violin every evening in front of their offices. So then they used to use us to work out. I did another thing while I was in Auschwitz. I guess this might interest you. Somebody came and told us that they are building a plant not far from Auschwitz where they will be using some extract from a certain flower to make rubber.
Was this Rysco, the name of the place?
I don't know what it was. I never got there, but I applied for it. So they said they need biologists. I said, I'm a biologist. So they gave me an exam. They took me up there. I have been there, but I don't know. They took you in a closed van, and you didn't know where you were going. And my rationale at that was also kind of strange. I figured to myself that they wouldn't give a Jew any responsible work, like working in the laboratory All I'll have to do is either wash the floors or wipe the microscope or do something like that. This I could do. But when we came, they gave us flowers, they asked us, the flower that they used was coxygis. It was a little like a yellow little flower, and it had a round tubular stem, and when you opened it up, it was kind of milky. Maybe I have the name kind of, but it came to me just like that. I never thought about it for so many years. I think this is what it was. And they were telling us that from that little, there was a milky substance in the corn, and that's what they told us. So I went there, and there was a woman who was also a prisoner who gave me the test. It wasn't a written test. It never worked out, but as a result of having passed that test, I was left in the barracks as verfügbar. That means to wait until the job will become available. Then there was a rumor that they need bookkeepers. Since I was verfügbar at that, I was never a bookkeeper. I said, I am a bookkeeper too. Now, the bookkeeper examination was a little bit more strenuous because he put us up he gave us a written exam with a gun on the desk. If you lie and if you don't know, you get shot and you go you know where. I don't know how I passed it. I really don't know. I don't know the strength. I don't know how my brain worked at that time, how I passed the biology exam. I really don't know. I don't know how I passed this test. But then this was a real professional giving us the written exam. But the oral exam was given by a nut, by a German nut. He came in with his riding outfit, with his riding whip. He put us on and he asked you a question. I remember by the time he got to me, I thought all the questions, some of them asked yes, I didn't know. I got a question, what kind of bookkeeping do I know? I said double and single, I don't remember what I said. And once you answered him, this is what I mean, I was very fresh. That too helped me a great deal. I was once caught smoking a cigarette by Tauber, who was a manivel, who was the horror and the most fearful guy in Auschwitz. And I stood up to him. And he told me, he called me the Schreiberin with a frechen Schnauze. Because he caught us through a hole. We had to, how they used why I became a Schreiberin. Many of the girls who were Blockälteste and Vertreterin and whatever, they were very good with that, but with numbers. Many of the Czechoslovakian girls that survived were strong, husky peasant girls. They didn't have too many brains. Some of them did, but not all of them. When they opened the second lager, somebody suggested I pick up languages very quickly. So I picked up Czechoslovakian because it's not that far from Polish. And I was always talking to them. So one of them thought that I'm Czechoslovakian because they were giving out the jobs to Czechoslovakian girls. That's how I got it. And that's how Tauber caught me smoking one day because we lost a number. In the morning you had to present it in numerical order. I lost a number. And I had a good idea what happened because a mother and 3 kids came, and the minute they saw that this is a mother and 3 kids, they put everyone someplace else. And what happened that night, that either the kid went to the mother or the mother came to him, and it didn't work out in this way. So we were sitting a whole night trying to figure out the Vertreterin and I. And it must have been 2 o'clock in the morning. I was smoking a cigarette. And we were smoking them on bobby pins, so we shouldn't get the hands brown, so they shouldn't punish us for smoking cigarettes. And he apparently looked through a crack of the thing that was hanging, and he walked in. And I stood there smoking. I didn't hide it. So he says, "What's the matter with you? Aren't you afraid of me? Aren't you hiding?" I says, "I don't think you're stupid not to see that I hide. You see I'm smoking. Want to punish me? Punish me." He was so flabbergasted that I answered him back. So he says, so why are you sitting till so late in the morning? So we told them about the number that we were missing and so on. And I guess they were lonely too, sometimes walking around at 2 o'clock patrolling the swampy business over there. So he said, well, I didn't get punished for that. And there was some other thing. Yeah, from then on, you know, he would sometimes say hi to me, and when he will see me on the thing. And then I met two people that I saw, some friends of mine that I met, a mother of a friend of mine, and then they weren't really friends that I knew them from before, but they were so different than the people that came into my block. They weren't wild, they were kind of reticent, they were kind of like me. I was afraid of my own shadow, that when you told them to sit, they sat, and they were beautiful, beautiful girls. And they were standing there, and everybody was stealing everything from them. So I became kind of interested in them. And there were three sisters, and one was 14 years old. And one day they decided that she is too young, and everybody who was younger, they're going to take her to the crematorium. And I spoke to him, and he let her go. And a couple of months later, there was the mother of a friend of mine, and I went, and he says, how many relatives do you have in this place? But he let her go too. So and then I didn't see him. But those were things. There were other things that were going on. After a while, those people that came with us as Poles, and you know, in Krakow, we all converged from different part of the country. Everybody went as far away from his own place so as not to be recognized. Mm-hmm. But towards the end, they started bringing in Polish people. And some of those that pretended to be Polish were recognized, and they had a very tough time. They had to bribe. Now, I suppose you also know that they brought people from Russia, and there were children from Russia there. That I'm sure you know. Now, I think another interesting phenomena was about those that knew us well would tell us that we who have those old numbers, they will not let us survive, so that it would be stupid of them, so that we couldn't be witnesses against them, having been for such a long time there. So they said they'll blow up the camp together with us and with themselves, because they don't want the Russians. Then towards the end of the 44, they began bringing in like buyers of slaves. That's the way it felt to us. You know, people who came to look. They needed workers for working camps or factories. And also they began bringing in people. There must have been something on the outside. I think, I don't remember at this point, but there was a good reason. From Hungary, they began bringing in people not to stay, but for the quarantine, so to say, and for the things that they brought with them, and they sent them on. They didn't leave them there. They gave them gray uniforms, not stripes like we were wearing. They gave them gray uniforms, and they sent them out. Now, since I was a Schreiberin, I was involved in organizing many of them, because it was like packages of cattle. That's the way they handled the people. The numbers had to be correct, and you had to stand in a certain way, and so on. And when they came, I once told one of the girls, who seemed a little bit more, I could communicate. Hungarian I never learned. It was too difficult for me. I've learned a couple of curse words. And I told one of the girls, I said, because, you know, the chimneys were burning all the time. It was stinking there, something awful in Auschwitz. And I told her, I said, you see those chimneys? No, it started another way. She came and she says, how come we are not getting enough bread? They were told that there are 5 bakeries here. They are burning all day long. She could see them working. How come we give them so little bread? And how come we look so well And we don't give them and we did after 2 years in Auschwitz. It was like in the army already. You knew where to go to get something. You knew somebody who could bring you a pair of pants, and you somebody who can bring you an extra. If you had friends, you exchanged all these things. So I told her, I says, you know, my dear, those are not bakeries. Those are places where people are being. Now she could not accept it. I says, you know, you're going out into some factories outside of Auschwitz, and you're probably going to survive. We are not. Would you please tell people what's going on here? So she says, I don't see anything going on. And she told on me. I was lucky she told on somebody who knew me. So they beat her up instead of, she couldn't understand what hit her. You see. So that was also very interesting. Then when they came to take people out, and when we already knew that they are not going to let us out. So at one point where I was preparing such a package, such a deal, like he came for 200 people for Oberallstadt, for that place. And I had to work in conjunction with other people. And this time I worked in conjunction with some of the non-Jewish people who were the kapos and so on, who also knew me. And I put up the people who had to go, the 200, like in rows of 5. I presented the list. I put my number inside too, but I put myself like the second row from the last in the middle. And while I was counting and doing all these things, somebody else was standing in for me, you see. And when they were counting out, you know, the 200 people, and I was at the door, at the gate, all the way towards the end, standing together with the camp director and with all of them. And then I said that some line, I told them that the line it looks crooked. You know, it had to be straight on the other side. And I walked over on the other side, and she walked out, and I stepped in as the gate was out, and they closed the gate. And that's it. With them, lass dich bloß nicht erwischen. That's all that it was. I walked out, and that was the end. Nobody ran after me to tell me, why did you go out? What did you do? You see, but when I went out, I prepared myself. You see, the truth, the kids brought me a coat, a big heavy coat, and we sewed in another dress, and we sewed in a sweater, and I looked like a balloon when I walked out. But I had lots of stuff. I had a watch, and I had all kinds of things that we felt, I mean, I would need. And there were 3 of us that went out like that at this time. And each time a transport came, somebody from the old bunch who was not that well known, you know, like a Blockälteste, she could do that because she was too well known, although I was pretty well, I don't know. But anyhow, I walked out with it. And when we got into that place, it was we went in the same kind of trains that they always send people on, you know, the animal trains, freight trains. It was, of course, a paradise in comparison with the camp was a paradise in comparison. It looked to me like it was new. There were fairly new barracks, and there were small rooms with beds like double-deckers that the kids have. A top and a bottom, two to one of the double-decker. And there were 2, 4, 6, 6 or 8 people in a room. There was one had a kitchen. This camp was not that prominent in my head because the pain wasn't that great. You know, I know that we were working to walking to work. It was dark and it was snowy. It must have been in the winter, so it would be either January 45 or December 44 or something like that. Along with members of your family. I arrived alone. I arrived with members from the camp family, some of them. Now, I think I told you that you want me to answer these questions as
No,
they go?
you can just tell me about it. Tell me in general, but keeping the questions in mind.
No, there was, we arrived for a specific purpose. That we were brought to work, and I assumed that the barracks into which we came, they looked pretty crispy fresh. They must have been built in preparation for our arrival. We came as labor force. I don't remember any names. Now our camp had a barbed wire, not an electric like in Auschwitz, a regular barbed wire fence with two of those upstanding booths, where there was always two soldiers at the beginning and at the end watching us. There were women. Most of the people there were women inside, and we were walking to work with some men and dogs. And you were right, there was another camp that we used to go sometimes. We used to stop there, and from there they send us out. We were like a little bit out, and then we went to another camp, and from there they would give us the disposition where we would go.
You don't know the name of the other camp?
No, I don't. The town. This was the town, I'm quite sure. And then we were working. We'd go out sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we would come back at 6 or 7 at night. And at different weeks we would work reverse. We would work at night and stay in during the day. And on the way back from work, we always met a group of British soldiers, intern soldiers, campers also. And from time to time, some of them will try to throw over an apple or something to give to us. The townspeople that we passed through did not seem unfriendly. They watched us, they shook their heads, but nobody tried to do anything in particular. Now, I'm trying to think of the foreman that I have. Ehrer. I don't remember. When I worked at night, it was much easier because the women and the men, the Gestapo women and the men who were watching us would roll up in corners and fall asleep. So the atmosphere was kind of, they didn't press, they didn't check, they didn't breathe down your neck. Now, I used to have a little thing of all my own that I used to do. I used to bust the belts. That was my thing. Every time I went that somebody wasn't there, I would go over and cut the leather belt. So then the machine wouldn't work for a half a day. So this was my part of the sabotage that I was doing. And I also used that because our shoes got torn and we couldn't have leather, so we used to steal the belts out, and we used to sole our own shoes with these belts. Now, occasionally, we would have contacts with there were French people there too, who worked during the day, now that I think about it. We would see men. They were not allowed to talk to us. But you see, when they brought us into that place, to that factory, it was always dark when we came in and it was dark when we left. So we never had a chance to see. For all I know, it might have been buried someplace. But we were driven, sometimes we walked, and so I think I remember French people there. Now, after a while, we heard that Berlin was cut away. So that's when we began seeing that we were redoing the same thing we did again. You see, I had a foreman who was supervising our particular, I was a borer in. I used to make, with a drill, I used to drill holes in the things. And at night, as I started telling you, at night was easier. When nobody was around, I would sit, and the machines were very loud. You would never know that somebody's there. So I would sit and I would sing parts from operas, parts from. So one day he came that I think his name was Ehrer or Edelman, something with Edel, or Ehrer or Edel, something was that. He was a civilian. He looked to me like a sick man. He looked to me like a guy whom they really could not utilize for the Wehrmacht or anything. So he was supervising us. And he came over to me and he says, "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" So I thought I made the wrong hole. I didn't know what I did. So I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, do you have any idea that you are, I don't remember whether I was whistling Bach or Brahms or somebody. It was a German composer." So he says, "How do you know?" And this was another guy. He never saw a Jew in his life. He swore. And it became his contention that I must have had somebody in my family background, that wasn't Jewish. Because my nose was straight, the whole same spiel. I didn't look like the Stürmer, and I also didn't do the things that others did. When we got the food, they brought them in these supposedly thermos cans. They looked like the garbage cans that we are using now. So when they dished the food out, some of the women would go into that thing, would ask permission to lick out the can. Some people didn't have enough to eat ever, because the food was not nutritious and it wasn't tasty, and there was a time when we had no salt at all. And as the kohlraben were rotten that they were giving us, you had to hold your nose to take the thing down, but you had to take something warm down. So some of us learned to eat a little bit just to get something in. Some of us never went to lick out the can, and some of them did. And they used this to belittle or to do all kinds of things. I mean, they were right there. But this guy in particular, he didn't know what hit him when he saw us. None of us. We were strong girls. We were pretty young. When they came to select, they didn't select you when you were dressed. Those guys, you had to work in a factory. They had to see your body, whether under the arm and in between your legs, and everything they had to see. It should be just perfect. In order you should be able to work well in the factory. So most of us looked pretty well. So he tried to be nice, and he would bring me sometimes when everybody would sleep. He used to have conniptions 1,000 times, but he wanted to tell me. So he told me when Roosevelt died, they picked it up on the radio. He told me a new president was Truman. I never heard. I mean, I was too young to know these things too. And he also told us when Hitler died, something happened with Hitler. But before that, when they closed off Berlin, that's what we did. They closed the factory, and they took us out into the field to dig ditches. And they wanted us to dig the ditches 6 feet deep so that they could be able to oppose the Russian army moving on. The Russian or the American or whatever. And that was a pretty horrible kind of work too, because it was, but it was wet, and it was in the street, in the open, and it was rain or shine. But it was already the end of April and the beginning of May when we were working on it. And I guess it was May the 5th. I think it was May the 5th. That was when the war ended. Or May the 4th, or May the 5th, I suppose. All of a sudden, we saw all the Germans and all the dogs and everybody, because when we were in the field, it was practically a German with a dog to 5 people that were digging it very close to each other, because right in the back of us were forests, you know. All of a sudden, we saw them go away and congregate someplace on a plain, and they were talking. And while they were congregated, we knew that something was going on, that something is not kosher. And they came back and they said, you stay here and you got to do this and you got to do that. And then the girls started asking me. Somehow they considered me a leader in that group. Not so much a leader, I wasn't aggressive, but I was thoughtful. I tried to figure things out in terms of consequences, in terms of Narishkeit, and in terms of not doing certain things that we should get ourselves into a jam. I used to be able to get them out of a jam when somebody did, because I think I have a good sense of humor. This helped me a great deal. I could joke with them. I could kid with the Germans. But my contention was that I want to save myself. I wouldn't prostitute myself, but I would do anything to make it easier for me, for others, for whatever. So they came to me, they said, how about running into the forest? But you know, when you stand on a plain and you see trees far away, it is really difficult to judge how far you would have to run before those guys with the guns and the dogs are going to gun you down. And I said, I'm not running. I told them that it looks like it is the end. And if whoever feels like going should do it now. I didn't have the strength. I really didn't. Somehow I didn't. Well, anyhow, I don't think anybody ran away. They said, if I'm not going, they're not going. It's from our barrack only, you see. So we stayed there, and many of the Germans formed us in the Fünferreihen, in fives, and they took us back. Now that you mentioned it, they took us back to the central camp, not to ours that was kind of out. And when we came there, we saw that the rows and the stacks of potatoes, you know, for the winter, how they winterize potatoes, they put them in certain piles, that this was all gone. So when we came into their dining hall, we asked what's going on. Somebody says, we think that the war is over. But they were still keeping us. They took us into our camp, and we went to sleep, and when we woke up, there was nobody there. Not a soul. Now, for 2 or 3 days, we stayed with nobody. Absolutely nobody. Not the Russians, not the British. And of course, they went away. Now, the prisoners of war, the soldiers, the British soldiers, came to our camp in the morning to tell us that the war is over. Now, I have had a smidgen of English before the war in 1939. In that where I was telling you that I saw the German people, there was somebody who conducted a Berlitz school, and whenever we came there, I picked up a couple of words. I knew a little bit of English, and I could communicate. The minute they came, they called me out to talk to the German guys, and not to the German, to the British. And that's when they told us that it is ceasefire, and they don't know who's going to come here. It is possible that either the British or the Russians or the Americans will come to take the camp. In meantime, nobody came. Now, when nobody came, our people went wild. They went out into the street, and they went into the houses of the people. They robbed, which I tried to keep down because those were Czechoslovak people. Those were not German families. We were in a land that wasn't really sympathetic to them. It's true we couldn't know who was collaborating and who was not, but they ran like crazy. They brought saddles, whole parts of beef, of meat. There were a number of people who died from overeating because we cooked it on two bricks. We made a fire and 2 bricks, and you cut a piece of meat and you